Ready to talk English easily? Hit subscribe for helpful advice and fun ways to practice. It was a cold winter day when Jack came into the bookstore, lost in thought. The soft scent of old pages and fresh coffee filled the air. But Jack barely noticed. He had been walking for hours, his mind heavy, his heart even heavier. He had been coming to this small bookstore for a while, not really looking for anything but an escape. He'd never said much to Lily before, just a polite nod when he'd come in. But today felt different. He wasn't sure why, but he felt like talking. Like maybe it was time to stop pretending everything was fine. Lily noticed him standing by the counter, staring at the rows of books. But something in his eyes made her pause. He didn't seem like the same man who'd walked in the last few times. There was a sadness there, something deeper. It wasn't the first time she had noticed people struggling, but today felt like he was asking for more than just a book. "Hey," she said, her voice soft but warm. "Is everything okay?" Jack hesitated. It wasn't easy for him to open up, to show any kind of weakness. He'd spent so many years building walls around himself, telling himself he could handle things on his own. But today, those walls felt a little thinner. "No," he finally admitted. "I'm not sure I'm okay." Lily smiled gently, her eyes kind and understanding. "I get that. Sometimes we don't even know what okay really means anymore, right?" Jack gave a small, sad laugh. "Yeah. It's like I've been pretending to be fine for so long that I don't even remember what it feels like to actually be happy." Lily nodded, taking a deep breath. She'd been there once, too. "You know," she said slowly, "I used to feel the same way. For a long time, I felt like I was just going through the motions, trying to keep everything together. But I've learned something over the years. Sometimes it's okay to let things fall apart, as long as you're willing to pick them up again." Jack's brow furrowed. "I don't even know where to start. I've made so many mistakes. Letting people down, not doing things the way I thought I should. I've hurt people, and I don't know how to fix it." Lily gave a soft, gnawing seek. "I think we all hurt people, Jack. Not always on purpose, but it happens. The important thing isn't being perfect. It's about learning from what you've done, trying to do better, and most of all, learning to forgive yourself." Jack looked at her with a mixture of surprise and curiosity. She didn't sound like she was just offering some generic advice. Felt real. Like she knew what it was like to face those dark moments where you felt like you'd messed up everything. "I've made a lot of mistakes too," she continued. "More than I care to admit. But I'll tell you something. It's in those mistakes that I found myself. And more importantly, I found the strength to change." Jack leaned in slightly, genuinely interested. "What do you mean?" Lily smiled softly. her eyes distant for a moment as if she were seeing something in her past. Then she took a deep breath and started sharing. When I was younger, things were tough. My family didn't have much. We didn't have the fancy house or the nice clothes or anything that made people think we were doing well. My parents worked hard, but they were always stressed, always worried about how to make ends meet. I remember nights when I would just sit there, listening to them argue quietly in the next room. And I remember thinking, asterisk, how are we ever going to be okay? Asterisk, she paused, glancing at Jack, as if weighing how much to say. But here's the thing. I thought if I worked hard enough, if I kept pushing, I could make things better. I could fix everything. But what I didn't realize was that I was pushing so hard to be perfect that I was losing myself along the way. I wasn't taking care of me. I thought if I kept trying to be everything for everyone else, then I'd finally feel like I mattered. Jack sat silently, listening intently. He hadn't expected this kind of story from someone who seemed so put together. But now, it made sense. The kindness, the warmth in Lily's voice, it wasn't just because she worked at a bookstore. It was because she had been through her own storms. I didn't know it at the time, but I was carrying a lot of hurt. And I didn't even realize how much I had buried inside until one day, I found myself standing in front of the mirror, asking, asterisk, who am I really? What do I even want from life? Asterisk, that was the moment I realized that I wasn't broken, but I had to stop pretending that everything was fine. Jack's voice was quiet, but he spoke from a deep place. I feel like I've been pretending for so long, too. I've been trying to keep up this image of having everything together, of being successful, of doing what I'm supposed to do. But I'm just tired and empty. Lily nodded, her heart aching for him, remembering how it felt to be at that place. It's okay to be tired. It's okay to be empty. That's just life reminding us that we can't do it all on our own. And you don't have to. The thing is, Jack, you can't pour from an empty cup. You've got to take care of yourself first. You've got to give yourself permission to heal, to stop worrying about being perfect and just be. Jack let the words sink in, feeling a weight lift off his shoulders. For the first time in a long while, he felt like maybe it was okay to not have everything figured out. I've spent so much time running from my own feelings, trying to keep up with this image of who I'm supposed to be, Jack said, his voice cracking a little. I think I've been afraid to face myself. Afraid that if I did, I wouldn't like what I found. Lily's voice softened, her eyes full of empathy. We're all afraid of that. But facing ourselves, our imperfections, our fears, our mistakes is where the real healing happens. It's in those cracks that the light gets in. And Jack, you're not broken. You're just human, like the rest of us. We all have our flaws, but they don't define us. It's what we do with them, how we move forward, that matters. Jack looked at her, a tear slipping down his cheek. For the first time, he didn't feel the need to hide his pain, his confusion, or his fear. He could feel the weight of it, but it wasn't crushing him. Maybe it was okay to let go of the idea that he had to have it all together. Maybe it was okay to take small steps toward healing. Lily smiled gently. And remember, you don't have to do it alone. You've got people around you who care. But the first person you have to love and care for is you. The advice. Sometimes, we get caught up in trying to be perfect, trying to meet everyone else's expectations. And we forget that we're allowed to be human. It's okay to be tired. It's okay to feel lost. And it's okay to admit that we're not okay sometimes. The first step toward healing is showing ourselves some kindness and giving ourselves the space to grow, to learn, and to forgive. You don't have to have it all figured out right away. Just take it one step at a time and be gentle with yourself. You are enough. Even when you don't feel like it. Days turned into weeks. And Jack found himself returning to the bookstore more often than he had expected. First, it was just to escape the quiet of his apartment or the relentless grind of his work. But over time, the little bookstore began to feel like a refuge, a place where he could sit, breathe, and just be. Lily always seemed to know just when to offer him a smile or a simple word of encouragement. And though she didn't say much, Jack began to realize that the way she lived her life, her quiet strength, had an impact on him. One evening, as he entered the bookstore, he was surprised to see her sitting at the counter, staring at a cup of tea in her hands, her eyes far away. "Hey, you okay?" Jack asked, not knowing why he felt a need to check on her, as if his own journey was starting to feel intertwined with hers. Lily looked up, startled for a moment, but then her face softened. "Oh, hey, Jack. Yeah, I'm good. Just thinking." She motioned for him to sit. Jack hesitated for a moment but then slid into the chair across from her. The warmth of the room contrasted with the crisp, cold air outside. "What's on your mind?" he asked, his voice gentle. He wasn't sure what had prompted him to ask. It wasn't like him to pry, but something in Lily's demeanor made him feel like he wasn't the only one carrying a weight today. Lily took a deep breath, setting down her tea. Her eyes flickered for a moment, as if deciding how much to share. Then she spoke. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said that day, about feeling empty and tired. I realized something. I've spent so many years thinking that if I just kept going, kept pushing forward, I could outrun my own pain. But the truth is, catches up with you. Eventually. Jack leaned in. His interest peaked. Felt almost comforting. Hearing that she, too, had wrestled with the same kinds of doubts. Even though she seemed so put together. She continued, her voice soft but steady. When I first opened this bookstore, I thought it would fix everything. I thought, if I could create this space for people to come and feel safe, then maybe I'd feel that way too. But what I didn't expect was that I would still have to face my own fears and doubts, just like everyone else. I wanted to believe that once I was doing good, everything would fall into place. But it doesn't work like that. I still have days where I wonder if I'm enough, where I question if I'm doing the right thing. Jack felt a surge of understanding. That's exactly how I feel. I've spent so long chasing this image of success, thinking that if I just worked hard enough, I'd be happy. But even when I reached the goals I set for myself, I still felt empty. Like I'd reached the top, but I didn't know where to go from there. It was like I'd built this life, but it wasn't mine. I didn't even know who I was outside of the things I did. Lily smiled, a little wistfully. I think we all feel that way at some point. Like we're living someone else's dream instead of our own. But what I've learned is that it's okay to stop and ask. What do I actually want? Not what others expect from me. Not what society says is the right path. But what do I truly want? And you know what? It's okay if that answer changes over time. Jack stared at her, something clicking inside him. He had spent so many years trying to fit himself into a mold that wasn't even his. He had tried to be the person his parents, his friends, and even society wanted him to be. But none of that had ever felt like him. I'm starting to realize that too, Jack said quietly. That I've been so focused on following this checklist of what I thought I should do, that I've forgotten to ask myself what makes me feel alive. What actually matters to me. Lily nodded, her eyes gentle but knowing. Exactly. And the hardest part is giving yourself permission to walk away from what isn't right for you. Even if it looks good on paper. Even if it's what everyone expects. It's hard. But it's the only way you'll ever find peace. Jack thought about this for a long time. For so long, he had been afraid to make a change. Afraid of disappointing people. Of losing the stability he had worked so hard to build. But in that moment, looking at Lily, he realized that the fear of staying where he was, of continuing to live a life that wasn't truly his, was greater than the fear of making a change. I think I'm ready, Jack said slowly. I think I'm ready to figure out what I actually want. To stop living for everyone else and start living for me. But I don't even know where to start. Lily smiled warmly, her eyes filled with encouragement. The first step is always the hardest, but it's also the most important. Start by giving yourself permission to dream, to feel whatever you're feeling, without judgment. You don't need to have all the answers right now, but you do need to stop running from yourself. The answers will come when you stop pretending to be someone you're not. Jack took a deep breath, his heart lighter than it had been in months. It wasn't going to be easy. Change never was. But maybe for the first time, he wasn't afraid to face the unknown. He was ready to take that first step, even if it was small. ##### the next step. The next few weeks were filled with changes, both big and small. Jack started asking himself hard questions about what he really wanted from his life. He realized that he had been so focused on his career, on climbing the corporate ladder, that he had lost touch with what he loved. He had always enjoyed writing, but somewhere along the way, he had told himself it wasn't practical. But now, as he started making space for his passions, he realized how much he had neglected them. He began taking small steps, writing again, even if it was just for himself, and rethinking his job, wondering if he could make a change that would align more with his values. And at the bookstore, Jack found comfort in the quiet moments he shared with Lily. He didn't need to speak all the time. Sometimes, just being in the same space was enough. It was like they were both learning, growing, and healing together, each on their own path, but supporting each other in ways that felt deeply meaningful. One evening, Jack found himself sitting by the fire in his apartment, a notebook in hand, scribbling words without worrying about where they would take him. And for the first time in a long while, he felt alive, not because everything was perfect, but because he was finally on the path to becoming the person he was meant to be. The advice sometimes takes a quiet moment, a simple conversation, or a gentle nudge to realize that the life you're living isn't the one that was meant for you. The fear of change can hold us back. But what we don't realize is that the greatest regret often comes from staying in a place where we don't belong. It's okay not to have all the answers. It's okay to change direction. The most important thing is to give yourself permission to choose your own path, even if it's different from what you expected. Take it one step at a time, and trust that the right journey will unfold when you stop pretending to be someone you're not. Months passed, and Jack found himself feeling more at peace than he had in years. His days still had their challenges. His old job wasn't easy to walk away from, and the fear of disappointing people still lingered, but something inside him had shifted. He had spent his whole life running on a treadmill, chasing after goals that others had set for him. But now, for the first time, he was letting himself walk off that treadmill and start choosing his own path. He didn't have all the answers, but he was learning to be okay with that. The first change was small. He began writing again. It was just for himself at first, jotting down thoughts, observations, and stories in a notebook he'd found buried in a drawer. He wasn't trying to write a novel or create anything grand. He was just writing to remember what it felt like to express himself without worrying about whether it was good enough. Jack also started making small changes at work. He had always told himself that the corporate ladder was the only way to success. But now, he was considering other options. He started exploring ways he could merge his love for writing with a career that felt more meaningful, something that would allow him to help others tell their stories, too. One chilly afternoon, Jack stopped by the bookstore again. It had become his haven. The familiar scent of coffee, the soft murmur of conversations, the sound of pages turning. It all felt like a gentle reminder that life didn't always have to be fast, or loud, or perfect. Lily was behind the counter, as usual, but today there was something different about her. She was smiling more, her face glowing, eyes sparkling with a quiet joy. Jack couldn't help but notice it. "Hey," he said, walking up to the counter. "You seem happy today." Lily looked up, surprised by the observation, and then laughed softly. "Is it that obvious?" Jack smiled. "Yeah. You just seem peace." She nodded, her expression softening. "I think I am. And it's funny because for the longest time, I thought I had to have everything figured out, to be perfect, before I could feel at peace. But the truth is, I had to accept that the peace I was looking for was always here. It was in letting go of the idea that everything had to be fixed before I could be happy. And in letting go of that, I found the freedom to just live." Jack felt a warm wave of understanding wash over him. He had been learning the same thing, in his own way. He had spent so many years chasing after the wrong things, thinking that if he just got them, everything would fall into place. But now, he was beginning to understand that peace wasn't about reaching some distant goal or finding the perfect job or relationship. It was about embracing the process, trusting that life had its own rhythm, and learning to dance with it, even when the steps weren't clear. That evening, Jack went home with a lightness in his heart. He sat at his desk, notebook open in front of him, but this time he felt ready to do something he hadn't been able to do before. Write with honesty. Not about what he thought others would want to read, but about what he wanted to say. He wrote about his fears, about his journey of trying to live up to expectations that were never his own. He wrote about the days when he felt lost and unsure, and about the moments when he allowed himself to simply be. He wrote about Lily and how she had shown him that it was okay to be vulnerable, that it was okay to let go of the idea that life had to be perfect in order to be beautiful. As he wrote, Jack realized that the act of writing wasn't just about putting words on paper. It was about finding clarity in his own life. It was the process of unpacking his emotions, of telling his own story, and accepting every part of it, both the messy and the wonderful. He stopped for a moment, reading over the words he had just written. It wasn't finished, not by a long shot, but it felt real. And that was enough. A week later, Jack met Lily for coffee at a small cafe near the bookstore. It was one of those moments where, for a brief while, the world felt suspended in time, a quiet, shared space of two people who were no longer trying to prove anything to anyone. Jack couldn't help but smile as they sat down. "You know," he said, "I think I'm finally starting to get it." Lily raised an eyebrow, curious. "Get what?" "Get that the journey isn't about reaching some destination," he said, his voice more certain than it had ever been. "It's about how we live along the way. It's about being okay with not having it all figured out." "I spent so long thinking that happiness and success were somewhere asterisk out there. Asterisk that I missed what was right in front of me. But now, I'm learning that it's not about fixing everything. It's about just being. And trusting that everything will unfold the way it's supposed to." Lily smiled softly, a proud look in her eyes. "That's exactly it. It's about living in the moment, letting go of the pressure to always have the next step planned. It's about showing up for your life as it is right now, not waiting for some perfect future." Jack thought about how far he had come since that first day he had walked into the bookstore, feeling lost and unsure. Back then, he had been drowning in expectations, his own and others. But now, he was starting to breathe again. The world wasn't perfect, and neither was he. But that was okay. "I've decided," Jack said slowly, taking a deep breath, "that I want to do more than just work for a paycheck. I want to write, help people share their stories, help them find their voice like you've helped me find mine. I don't know exactly what that looks like yet, but it feels right. I'm not waiting anymore. I'm going to start living the life I want, not the one I was supposed to have." Lily's face lit up with a radiant smile. "That's amazing, Jack. I'm so proud of you." #### the advice. In life, we often get caught up in the idea that we need to have everything figured out, that we need to be successful before we can be happy, or that we have to meet some arbitrary set of goals before we can feel fulfilled. But what we forget is that life isn't a checklist. It's a journey, process. And the key to peace and happiness isn't about reaching some distant destination. It's about embracing the journey itself, letting go of the need for perfection, and trusting that we are exactly where we need to be, even if we don't have all the answers yet. The road ahead might not always be clear, but that's okay. The only thing that matters is showing up, staying open, and trusting that everything will unfold as it's meant to. It's never too late to start living the life that feels true to you. Let's enrich our vocabulary with some new words. 1. Refuge. Meaning: a safe or peaceful place where you can find comfort or escape from problems. Example: the bookstore became his refuge from the chaos of everyday life. 2. Hesitate. Meaning: to pause before doing something, often because of uncertainty or doubt. Example: he hesitated before speaking, unsure of what to say. 3. Wistfully. Meaning: with longing or sadness, usually because of something lost or unattainable. Example: she smiled wistfully, remembering the days when she was more carefree. 4. Outrun. Meaning: to run faster than something or someone, often used metaphorically to mean avoiding or escaping something. Example: she thought she could outrun her past, but it always caught up with her. 5. Flicker. Meaning: a brief or quick movement or change, often used to describe light or emotions. Example: his emotions flickered between hope and doubt. 6. Treadmill. Meaning: a machine for running or walking in place, but metaphorically it refers to a repetitive, exhausting routine that doesn't lead anywhere. Example: he had been running on a treadmill, focusing only on work and never taking time to enjoy life. 7. Rhythm. Meaning: a regular, repeated pattern of movement or sound. It can also be used to describe the natural flow of events or life. Example: life has its own rhythm, and sometimes we need to stop and listen. Embarrassed. Meaning: feeling self-conscious or ashamed, often because of a mistake or awkward situation. Example: he was embarrassed when he realized he had misunderstood her. 9. Unfold. Meaning: to open up, or to gradually develop and reveal itself over time. Example: the story of her life slowly began to unfold in the pages of her journal. 10. Vulnerable. Meaning: open to emotional harm or being exposed to the possibility of hurt, often due to trust or openness. Example: she felt vulnerable sharing her true feelings, but it was also freeing. 11. Clarity. Meaning: the state of being clear and easy to understand. Mental clarity means understanding something deeply or with focus. Example: writing down his thoughts helped bring clarity to his feelings. 12. Uncertainty. Meaning: a feeling of doubt or not knowing what will happen in the future. Example: the uncertainty of his future made him anxious, but he was learning to cope. 13. Distant. Meaning: far away in space or time, can also describe an emotional coldness or separation. Example: his goals felt distant, but he knew that small steps could lead him there. I'm so glad you spent this time with me. If you liked the story, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more. Take care, and see you next time.